Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Auz billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Jazakallah khair for joining the Zakat webinar. My name is Nasir Ahmed. So glad to host this particular Zakat webinar. We are joined by National Zakat Foundation and Imam Nabil Khan, Imam also Imam Muaz from Marka Masjid. So I'll be giving their brief introduction. And also we have Brother Zaid Mirza from National Zakat Foundation as well. So a brief intro on the National Zakat Foundation. National Zakat Foundation is a Canadian initiative which aims to utilize Zakat funds and voluntary donations collected in Canada for the benefit of local deserving recipients. As such, National Zakat Foundation is 100% local. National Zakat Foundation work covers 4 core areas that together form an end-to-end service for the Muslim community in Canada with respect to zakat, education, collection, calculation, and distribution. So Alhamdulillah, we are joined with Imam Nabil Khan. So a brief intro on Imam Nabil Khan. Imam Nabil Khan was born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. He began Islamic studies at Al-Ihsan Institute at the age of 15, where he became a graduate of the Dars Nizami under the supervision of Mufti Asim Rashid and other esteemed instructors. In the 5th year, Sheikh Nabil Khan also studied in Darul Uloom, Bury, UK. Imam Nabil currently acts as an imam in a number of local mosques, leading prayers, teaching children, and conducting programs of all varieties. He also supervises and consults the BCMA, halal monitoring in the BC Lower Mainland, conducts numerous lectures throughout BC for the youth, and is the founder of the Deen Team Youth Initiative. In addition to this, Sheikh Nabil Khan is an instructor for Arabic, Bachelor of Islamic Studies, short courses in Al Ihsan Institute of Higher Islamic Education. And the second speaker, inshallah, will be Sheikh Muaz Abdul Rahman. Sheikh Muaz Abdul Rahman is an imam at Islamic Society of Markham, our parent masjid. And also previously, he was an imam and Arabic teacher at Al-Nadwa Educational Islamic Center. He completed his hifz in first 3 years in Jamila Darul Karachi and graduated from Jamia Bunuria. And he also teaches Usulul Hadith and Usulul Fiqh 4 years in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Sheikh Nabil. Now, before I hand over to Sheikh Nabil, a couple of housekeeping things that we need to keep in mind. I see that, mashallah, a lot of people are already active on the chat. So if you could please send your questions on the chat, then inshallah at 2:45 Eastern time. I know Sheikh Nabil has joined from Vancouver, so it'll be, I believe, 11:45 for you, Sheikh. So we will stop that and then we will take questions at that time. So you can, inshallah, send the questions on the chat window. So once again, Jazakallah khair for joining. Now I will hand over the control to Sheikh Ehsan. Please go ahead. I'm sorry, Sheikh Nabil. I see as Al Ihsan, that's the reason. Please go ahead.
Is it okay if I share my screen?
Please. Yes, yes, yes. Go ahead.
You would need to stop sharing, I believe.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay, go ahead now. Yes,
Everybody
yes, we
see?
can. Yeah,
Okay, alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إن الحمد لله كفى والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى نبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I hope everybody inshallah doing well and their fasting is going well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept that from you all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also protect you during this pandemic, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you all healthy in a state of afiyah. Inshallah, today we're going to speak about zakat. We've been doing numerous seminars weekly, alhamdulillah. However, this seminar we're going to keep towards the basics and the fundamentals of zakat, inshallah. And as the host has mentioned, that we'll have questions, inshallah, towards the end. The first thing I would like to mention about zakat is really a fundamental outlook a perspective that we need to understand as Muslims about what is zakat. We are definitely aware of the importance of zakat in terms of its standing in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned zakat with salah in several places throughout the Quran. Aqimu salah wa atu zakah. Perform your prayer and give your alms, give your charity. Now, zakat has technicalities to it, but to understand the importance of zakat there's a very simple way of kind of seeing that or perceiving zakat, especially when you look at it as it comes in throughout the Quran with salah as well. How a person can look at it is that simply salah, which we know as Imad al-Din, is the pillar of Islam, and it's really the foundation of our iman. The Prophet ﷺ said that salah is such a thing that if it is rectified, then the human being will be rectified. And if it is ruined, then the human being himself will be ruined. And we know the importance of salah is the first thing that we will be asked about on the day of Qiyamah, because salah is the haqq of Allah on his slave in terms of their time and their body, where the human being is actually required to take out time and physically do an act. And this is repetitive, and it is only through the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is being done. Now, the second type of zakat, the second pillar of Islam, the pillar of zakat, is so fundamentally important and primitive in Islam due to the fact that it is also Allah's right on the slave, but in terms of his wealth. So wealth is something that is not restricted to even in the same way prayer is. Prayer is restricted time to time, five times a day, and then you have some other salawat, and nafil, etc. But zakat and wealth itself is something that is connected to the human being throughout his life at every moment. So technically, when you look at a human being, you find that myself, Nabil, if I have $10,000 in my savings, or $10,000 as my assets, then until the day, and let's say that the money may fluctuate $5,000 above or beneath, but let's say overall I have enough money that meets the nisab, over $1,000 or $500 in total savings. Now, throughout my life, that money is attached to me until I die. The moment I die, immediately Allah's right comes over that wealth again, and then it goes through the rulings of inheritance. So zakat itself is considered the forgotten pillar. However, it's something that needs to be revived. It's something that needs to be understood, and it's very important that we have seminars and workshops like we are having today. Alhamdulillah walillah alhamd. This is only from the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we are talking about the great rukn of Islam, the great pillar of Islam. And the rewards of zakat are in plenty, and also the punishment are very severe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, definitely it's a command, wa'atu zakah, and give your charity, give your zakat. And we'll talk about what is zakat, but Allah commands it in numerous places in the Quran. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man naqasa min malin sadaqah," that when you give charity and you take away from the initial wealth that you have to give out in charity, you never actually took away from your money. It was only, and why is that? Because that money was never yours. That was Allah's right in that money. The second thing is that there's so much blessing in giving that charity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah, and the barakah will replace the loss of that wealth. And in terms of not giving zakat, or the severity and punishments, the wa'id that come with not paying zakat, those are also very, very severe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَها فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُم بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Allah says, and those who hoard gold and silver, and then they don't spend it in Allah's path, meaning in their zakat, then tell them about a painful punishment coming. يوم يحمى عليها في نار جهنم فتكوى بها جباههم وجنوبهم وظهورهم هذا ما كنزتم لأنفسكم فذوقوا ما كنتم تكنزون. Allah says on that day, on the day of Qiyamah, that gold and silver and jewelry that zakat was due upon will be taken, heated, and they will be branded with that. And they will be burnt with it on their sides, in their foreheads, in their backs. And then it will be told to them, هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ. This is what you have hoarded. This is what you thought was a treasure. فَذُوقُوا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ. So now taste the punishment of those things, of that which you've hoarded. Also the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim said that من آتاه الله مالا فليؤدي زكاته فلم يؤدي زكاته مثل له يوم القيامة شجاعا أقرأ له زبيبتان يطوقه يوم القيامة ثم يأخذ بلهزمتيه يعني شدقي ثم يقول أنا كنزك أنا مالك ثم تلا هذه الآية ولا تحسبن الذين يبخلون بما آتاهم الله من فضله خيرا لهم بل هو شر لهم سيطوقون ما بخلوا به يوم القيامة والله ولله ميراث السماوات والأرض والله بما تعملون خبير. The Prophet ﷺ said, the person who Allah has granted enough wealth in which zakat is due upon, فَلَمْ يُؤَدِّي زَكَاتَهُ, and despite that does not pay the alms due, then مُثِّلَ لَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, that wealth will be turned into a massive snake on the day of Qiyamah. أقرأ, it will be hairless, له زبيبتان, it will have two very dark eyes, and some ulama say that there will be two black spots that you can recognize of this snake. يطوقه يوم القيامة, it will literally wrap around him on the day of Qiyamah like a python. And then Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says that then that wealth which is turned into the snake who is wrapped around him will say to that person, Ana kanzuk, ana maluk, I was your money that you were supposed to pay. I was the zakat you were supposed to pay. And then the Prophet ﷺ read a very, very strong ayah of the Quran where he says, Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا أَتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Do not consider, do not think that those people who withhold their wealth and are stingy in their zakat from what Allah has given them of wealth, that this is good for them. بَلْ هُوَ شَرٌّ لَهُمْ, rather this is ruin for them. So يُطَوَّقُونَ مَا بَخِلُوا بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, they will be wrapped in this on the day of Qiyamah. And Allah owns everything in the heavens and the earth, and Allah is all aware of what you are doing.
Sheikh, my apologies for interrupting. Just want to make sure that are you sharing the slides? We just see one slide. What is zakat? Lexically, purity increased to.
Yes, I'll be going through this inshallah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought. Oh, you're still on the first slide then.
This is
Okay.
kind of just an introduction, inshallah. Don't worry.
Okay. Jazakallah khair.
So it's important to understand why we are speaking about zakat, because zakat is itself can become very complex in terms of assets and dividing and calculating. However, alhamdulillah, nowadays there are there are imams everywhere, and the imams are there to help you understand, to calculate, to assess and analyze your zakat and your zakatable assets. But it's very important, we find that majority of people actually do not pay their zakat. There have been studies out and statistics done that majority of Muslims, it's actually the predominant majority, either do not pay their zakat or do not understand that they have a certain amount that they need to pay. So there are most Muslims in the world, especially in North America, who are able to and are eligible and required to pay the zakat. They first choose not to pay their zakat, which is the worst category, unfortunately. And then within those who choose to pay it, those who pay it carelessly, and they do not actually calculate their zakat, and only seldom do Muslims take it as a great responsibility that they pay their zakat and they are diligent on how much they need to pay and on calculating that. So we are here to educate the people on some basics, inshallah, so that they understand what is zakat. And then there are modems, there are platforms all over the country that people can use to their avail. They're at their avail. They're there to support them, inshallah, and they should be using those, inshallah. So, inshallah, the first thing we're going to speak about is az-zakat lughatan. Zakat in the Arabic language is referred to as purity, tahara. This is where the word tazkiyah comes from. Tazkiyah, which you hear of like purifying the soul, or tasawwuf, they say. It comes from originally, you find in the Quran, yuzakkihim wa yu'allimuhum al-kitab wal-hikmah. Tazkiyah is the word in Arabic that comes from zakat originally. It's a form from that same word, which means to purify. One actual other meaning, a more deeper traditional meaning of zakat is to burn. And the scholars of Lugha have said that it means to burn because that wealth that is in the possession of a person that zakat is due upon him is haram, and it needs to be taken out. Otherwise, that will burn him on the day of Qiyamah. Or another understanding of that is that without that money being removed, it will burn away the wealth that is there and remove the barakah from that wealth. And the other meaning of zakat, these both are used towards understanding the shari, the Islamic meaning, would be an-nama, which is an increase, anything that kind of increases. Islamically speaking, it is the transfer of ownership of a certain amount of wealth that has been prescribed by the law, meaning Sharia, from a rich person to a poor Muslim who is neither a Hashimi or a slave of Hashimi, and this is done for the sake of Allah. So you'll find in the basic definition a few major conditions. One is that zakat is given by the person who is considered in Islam wealthy. Zakat is given by the person who's considered wealthy, who meets the nisab. The second thing is that it is given at a due time, which is the passing of one entire year. The third thing is that wealth is given to within those people who Allah has also mentioned as eligible for zakat. And that third rule of those people that are eligible for zakat, meaning the masarif of zakat, from amongst that masarif, those different outlets or different people available, permissible to take zakat, within them there are two conditions that cannot take it, even if they are poor and destitute. And those are the Hashimis and other slave of the Hashimis, of the family of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. And the last condition, which is a very vital condition, is fi sabilillah, or lillah. That this zakat, it is the right of Allah, and it needs to be done with that intention that you are fulfilling the right of Allah. And it must be done with that niyyah. It is not like giving tax. So inshallah, we'll be talking about a little bit about what is zakat, some little details and some history, inshallah. Here you'll see that Aisha radiallahu anha, she says that zakat has never intermingled with any amount of wealth without destroying and rotting it. So when you have wealth and you don't pay this zakat, you're actually destroying your own wealth. You're eating at that wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I mentioned, has commanded this throughout the Quran in numerous places. Now, who is supposed to give what we call shurut, fardiyat zakat? The conditions that are required to consider zakat necessary on that person. The first is that the person must be an adult. An adult in Islam means a person who has reached maturity, has hit the age of puberty. So it's not a legal age where you are 19, for example, and you leave the infant state, legally speaking. Rather, it's bulugh, when somebody reaches the state of puberty. The scholars amongst themselves have, and based on the different ahadith, have differed on what are the signs of puberty. However, we're not going to get into that, inshallah. The Hanafi scholars specifically hold the opinion that the moment that a boy or a girl is 15 years old, then they will be considered to be baligh automatically. Based on the hadith of Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anh, where when he was 15 years old, only then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed him to engage in the jihad. He actually delayed him for 1 year when he was not 15, and he was not able to join in the jihad. The year later, when he was 15 years old, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam allowed him to participate in the jihad, and the jihad was only obligatory upon the adult Muslims. So they said that this was a sign of adulthood. Second is that zakat is only paid by Muslims. It is only paid to Muslims, and it is only paid by Muslims. So it's not really something that should be argued. Because sometimes people question that why is it only paid to Muslims, or why are only Muslims receiving zakat when there are poor non-Muslims around the world? This is a question that people have all the time. Well, you're looking only from the end service. If you look from the beginning service, you'll understand that zakat is only obligatory on Muslims. And since it's only obligatory on Muslims, it's a sole Islamic right. So it's only obligatory on Muslims, that has nothing to do with non-Muslims. And just like Muslims are the only ones required to pay it, Muslims are the only ones eligible to take it. It is a right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Muslims' wealth. And the third is to be sane or sound of mind, not to be majnoon or ma'atu, or not to be incapable of thinking coherently. Now, that is the Hanafi's opinion. The other three madhahib hold the opinion that if a person is insane or mentally ill and incapable of discharging their own zakat, but they have a guardian or a responsible trustee who may pay on their behalf, then they should be doing so. There is required according to the three other madhahib. Obviously, in terms of the difference of the madhab, the best thing to do is to take the safe route. And if a person does have a trustee, then it would be ideal for them to have them pay the zakat. So zakat differs all over many things. When you calculate zakat, you have to talk about the time of zakat, the year of zakat. When do you give the zakat? Loans, which come down to simply liabilities and assets. Debts, gold and silver, nuqud, currencies, cash equivalents, businesses, properties, and investments. All of these are different types of assets that people have in their life, which need to be taken into consideration in zakat. And it is not merely the amount of cash or earnings that you make in salary monthly or yearly. We pay zakat once a year, and zakat is paid on at a certain time. You can choose at your time. Most people, as you are aware, choose to pay their zakat in Ramadan to reap from those benefits and those blessings. When the time is set, then you should hold to that time and pay your zakat after the passing of that time. So if I were to set, today is, I think May 11th, right? May 10th. So today is May 10th, 2020. If I pay my zakat today, then around this time next year, I should be calculating my 21 assets, and also pay my zakat as well that time. Similar to like a fiscal year where it's not predetermined. It's up to each individual to set that time. Now, nisab, I've made a little kind of graph to understand, to help kind of visualize and picture what is going to happen with somebody's savings. Obviously, if somebody were to say, let's say May 10th, right now they have enough savings, and it were to go up and then down and up and down, zakat would be obligatory until the person loses the nisab. So if somebody started off the year as affluent, na'udhu billah, and then throughout the year they became destitute. Because of them being affluent at the beginning of the year will not require that they have to pay zakat at the end of the year. And it will be based on the wealth that is held throughout that entire time, inshallah. And to calculate the nisab, which you saw here, numbers of 800, don't really focus exactly on those numbers. Those are not the nisab. The nisab is based on gold or silver. The nisab of gold, from the last I checked, should be about 87.48 grams of gold. And you can go online and you can take this and calculate to what is the spot value of that. And there's also a nisab of silver, which is 612.36 grams. Which do we go by? Well, if you have only gold as your assets, say no cash, nothing else, only gold, then you have to go through gold. The same way, if you have only silver, then you would go through silver. The question is though, what if you have mixed assets? What if you have gold, silver, and let's say some cash and etc.? Then it will always be desired that the person goes through the nisab of silver. Nisab of silver is a lower nisab and a very beneficial to follow for the public, generally speaking, because more zakat is then paid, inshallah, or more people are paying zakat. For gold and silver, one keynote here, which is the opinion of the Hanafi scholars. The Hanafi madhab, which is predominantly acted upon today because of the whole taking into consideration mixed metals. And very seldom do you find metal of pure type, especially in jewelry, etc. for women. Usually it's mixed metals. So this also comes into question that what if I have mixed metals? Then if you have mixed metals, let's say you have gold and you have copper, or gold and let's say aluminum or some other metal, mixed metals. Now, to consider it gold in the same way to consider it silver is for the gold or silver to be predominant in that metal. So it should be 50% or more gold or 50% or more silver to be considered gold or silver. Once it reaches 50%, then there is no consideration of anything less than that. And it will be considered 100% gold then, 100% silver. And stones and gems, they are not considered zakatable. Liquid assets are always good to have. Many people have liquid assets, but a lot of people, they invest their liquid assets. So liquid assets are considered those that are of immediate usage. And generally in Sharia, they come within the meaning of al-athman wa nuqud. They come within those things that are those wealth or currencies that could be used instantly. And they have elastic value. It could be cash, it could be Canadian currency, it could be other currencies as well. And then gold and silver, they also come on this. If you have these, then it's very simple. If you only have cash, at the end of the day, you're just calculating 2.5%. It's as easy as a calculate math problem. So we do usually, I do go through some simple practice problems for people, inshallah. Let's say if you have $2,400 in cash, $2,100 in cash in the bank, like let's say savings, $2,100 at home, some gold and some silver, what would you obviously do? You'll bunch them all together. Once you bunch these all together, because these are all considered liquid assets, savings and cash and gold, you will add them all together, then this will be considered your zakatable assets. Once you have the zakatable assets, then you will apply the 2.5% rule, and then you will come out with how much zakat is due, $148.75. Then inshallah, our deductible debts, because before you do the calculations, you're going to take whatever assets you have, gold, silver, savings, cash, whatever it is. You will accumulate all of those, you'll calculate those together, then you are going to deduct liabilities. Deducting liabilities would take away, in this last scenario, it would take away from the zakatable assets. So, to simply explain, if this were the same equation, and then we were to say here that I owe Imam Mu'adh $950 that I owe him tomorrow. Imam Mu'adh gave me a loan, and I owe him $950 that I have to pay him tomorrow. Then my zakatul assets, would they increase or decrease? They would decrease. And my zakatable assets would then become $5,000. 950 would be removed, and then my rate of 2.5% would obviously decrease as a result of that. So deducting debts in terms of what we call duyun, there are three types of dains, which we don't really need to go through all their terminologies technically. It's more of what's applicable. You have a dain al-qawi, a dain al-mutawassit, and a dain al-da'if. Three types of dain, three types of debts. Here, what is more practical people follow are, obviously, a dain al-qawi is an immediate debt, which is a loan that must be paid right away. It's required. So this is what we mean by right away within that zakatable year. So how we have said, just as we have said that 1 year you're paying zakat, within that 1 year, zakat to be paid, if there is a debt or a loan that needs to be paid in that 12 months, then it is a strong debt and it must be removed completely from the zakatable assets as a liability. Like in the example that I gave you guys about Sheikh Mu'adh. The second is long-term debts. If you have a long-term term debt, like what you can consider a dain al-qasad, a debt that is paid in installments over years, then we only consider the debt that is going to be paid within the 12 months. So a person owns $100,000, some maybe Sheikh Mu'adh, very generous man. So Sheikh Mu'adh gave me $100,000, and I owe him $10,000, let's say $12,000, until I pay it off every year, $1,000 a month almost. So that year, my zakatable assets, I will deduct $12,000. I will not deduct $100,000. And within this discussion comes, you will see mortgages, etc. In mortgages and cars, car payments, the same thing is going to apply. Where if a car is going to be paid over a term amortization of 5 years, or a home is going to be paid over amortization of 25 to 30 years, then you only deduct the principal payment. Note that, not the entire payment. So if you're paying $300 a month on your car, and na'udhu billah, Allah protect us from riba, but if you're paying $300 a month and you got into an interest transaction, and only $250 is going to principal, and $50 is going to interest, you cannot deduct the $300. You can only deduct the $250, which is the principal payment. That $50 extra is interest, which should not be considered as a deductible debt within zakat. The same thing in a home, you will only be deducting the principal amount that is paid within that year, not the interest amount. Non-deductible assets, future expenses and bills. For example, I'm supposed to pay my zakat today, which is May 10th. At the end of the month, I have to pay my rent, $1,500. And I have to pay my phone bill, $100, and I have to pay, let's say, electricity bill, $200. So I have to pay $1,800 in bills in the future this month anyways. I am not allowed to deduct that from the zakat I need to pay now. These are future expenses, which is not. It's only thing that can be deducted that's going to be in a future expense is a debt in the future. And this is not yet a debt. Unlawful income cannot be done, and non-payable, which I discussed in the last slide, that all assets that are not payable within, all debts, sorry, that are not payable within 12 months, then they have no consideration in reducing from zakatable assets. And then here comes some details about a weak debt receivable. A weak debt receivable is a weak debt is receivable is when a person is waiting to receive one of the following types of payment: wages to be paid, any rental income if you are landlord, if you own a rental property, if you are a woman and are still to receive your dowry, if you are waiting for inheritance or some wasiyah to be paid. And the hukam, the ruling of those is that you do not add this money until you receive the funds. So in a weak debt, like in such cases, then you will not pre-consider this amongst your assets until those are received in payment. And you will not have to backdate them once you receive them. So today, May 10th, I have not gotten paid for my salary that was in April. I'm owed, let's say, $3,000. I'm not going to add that in my zakatable assets. And now, let's say next week they pay me the $3,000. I'm not going to backdate and pay the zakat on that. It is not necessary because it is a weak debt and is not taken into consideration in zakat during that time. And a strong debt is which you are waiting to receive as a money from a loan that you have given to somebody. And generally speaking, when there's a dain al-qawi, when there's a strong debt, then you will take consideration of this. Unless you have no, you gave a debt to someone, you gave a loan to somebody, and you feel, you have a strong feeling that they will never pay you back. I gave somebody $100, he ran off to India. I've never seen him again. So I'm not going to keep that $100 in my as an asset for me every year until I ever see him again. If such a case, the person comes back and you find out that the wealth is available to you at some point, then you have to pay the zakat and backdate that zakat for that. You can defer it. Because it is a strong debt, you can defer it, meaning that I could reduce this from my assets currently and pay it in the future when I get the money. However, it's not very ideal because most people, unless they're extremely diligent in calculating, they can misuse this. And there's a couple other, just a few pages I want to finish up with, inshallah, before we have the Q&A, for some simple understanding of that. Is if you see in this example here that a person has $8,200, then they have cash at home $1,500, they have $3,200 in gold, $700 in silver, they have monthly financing of $300, provided that this is the principal amount, not the interest amount. A loan was given to the masjid and a loan was owed by a friend. Now here you need to, based on the rules that we discussed, you would be able to assess immediately what is going to be deducted and what is going to be considered an asset. So you see here, there are $4,600 of deductibles. Why? Because if you take $300, which would be the monthly financing, times it by 12, you'd have $3,600. And the loan owed to a friend, $1,000 immediately. These are your $4,600 in zakatable, in deductible assets. So you'll take your gross assets of all of this together, which would be $15,600, minus your deductible, and remaining is your zakatable assets, inshallah. And then you apply 2.5%, and you'll see $275 will be paid. Another example, I can give, and I think this is the last one that I have, and then we'll I'll just go over Masarif al-Zakat, who are eligible in the Quran, inshallah, in receiving zakat, and then we'll take questions, inshallah. The last practice problem is here 16,500 is in the cash account, 3,000 at home, 6,500 in gold, 2,500 in silver, $1,700 in mortgage, provided this is principal, not interest included, loan to the masjid, and lost cash. So you can see it for a second to kind of see if you can understand that yourself. Then you will see, okay, your total gross assets are everything put together, and $20,400 are going to be deducted from that. Why do you think that is? Well, obviously you have your mortgage amount, $1,700, which is times this, which is always is $20,400, which is going to be your zakatable assets. Your lost cash here is not even going to be taken in consideration, doesn't exist anymore, and you remove that from your assets, and you have $18,100 remaining, and you take you times that by 0.025, which would be 2.5%, and then you have for $452.50, which is due as zakat. And inshallah, the last thing before we start is who gets zakat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. That zakat is given to the destitute, the poor, those that are employed in zakat, those that zakat is used to strengthen their bonds, their hearts, and in slaves, emancipating of slaves, and in those in debt relief for those that are in debt, and in the path of Allah for jihad, and in the traveler in need, faridatan min Allah. This is a obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu alimun hakim, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all knowing, and hakim, Allah is wise. And that last sifa there is also very important sifa. Allah is hakim, Allah is wise in why He has established the obligation of zakat and the importance and the benefits of zakat. And when people find themselves paying zakat, they will definitely find themselves in a state of barakah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure in their wealth. And inshallah, you can remember the hadith of Al-Qudsi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that إِذَا أُطِعْتُ بَارَكْتُ. When I am obeyed, I give barakah. وَلَيْسَ لِبَرَكَةِ نِهَايَةٍ. And when I give barakah, there's no end to the barakah. There's no end to my blessings. And we are all in search of that barakah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our zakat and your zakat and our program today, inshallah. I can take questions if there are any.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Nabil. That was very informative, and the practice problem really made it very simple. I really like that title of Zakat Made Simple, and mashallah, these practice problems did help us. Now, before I ask the questions, I would like to invite Sheikh Muaz, if he would like to comment or share any of his thoughts on this session. Sheikh Muaz.
Yeah, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakallah, Sheikh Nabil. It was really beneficial, and thank you so much. You made it really easy by making the slides. Jazakumullah khairah. It's because I don't know how many people are listening right now, so I don't want to.
We have 90 people, Sheikh.
Yeah, so the thing is, because I don't want to get into any kind of debate here, just because which of the two nisab we should go by, because the silver and the gold, it's kind of maybe a thing we have to do ijtihad on that today's time, because the prices of the gold and silver are way different than in the bygone times. So if we make the nisab today according to the price of silver, so it is like if a person is possessing like $500, he has to pay zakat, and he will not be eligible of taking zakat. So I don't think, because Sheikh Manzoor Nomani also mentioned that, so I don't know how the scholars in North America are taking it now. They are still stick to the price of nisab. I just want to make sure, because I'm not too much involved into zakat seminars or these kind of conferences, because it means that a person who possesses like $500, he will not be able to take zakat, because he by himself he became eligible to pay zakat, isn't it? So that was the only thing. Rest of the whole topic was pretty much clear, and everything, mashallah, especially the importance of zakat, how you mentioned, is important. So anyways, so that was the only thing I just want to share with you.
So Mala, Sheikh, generally speaking, yeah, so that is always a debate, because you're right, there's a very drastic change between the nisab of silver and the nisab of zakat. However, that's where you'll find majority of the scholars have said that just as a precaution, because the asl, I think the agreement really comes to the asl of zakat is, or zakatable people that can take zakat, is based on the hawaj asliya, having their basic needs. So the muftis and the scholars generally are saying that if a person has the nisab of silver, that would be a surplus or extra above, in addition to his hawaj asliya, based on some of the ahadith that come, where the Prophet ﷺ said that, that if you have a home to live in, and you wake up healthy in the morning, and you have a food to eat, and you have an animal to ride, it's like you have the whole world. So based on that, some of the scholars have said that, look, if you have that $500 in addition, or $600, whatever it is, the nisab of silver, in addition to your basic needs, then in the traditional Islamic perspective, you are actually considered a wealthy person. So that's where kind of the gray area is, and they know that nowadays that $500 is not that much money. Obviously, that person's zakat would not be much either. I think the zakat would be what, $12.50, right? $12.50 if you had $500. So it's not very much really about paying the zakat there. But yeah, so the scholars generally say that if the person has only gold as assets, then they should go buy gold. If they have only silver, they should go buy silver. But if they have mixed assets, it's better to take the precaution and go buy silver. However, definitely you will find people that will say no, we'll follow the gold based on their situation.
It's pretty clear now, Marana. Jazakumullah khaira. Before someone asks you these questions, I wanted to make it clear.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Truly appreciate it. So I'm going to go through the questions that we received in the order. We received a question through our email yesterday. So I'm going to read that question, Sheikh. In fact, there are two questions from this person, so hope you will be able to take this. How is zakat calculated on spousal RRSP? That's the first question. The second question is zakat paid on pension funds that are managed by pension management companies like OMERS, where both employees and employers contribute? Employees get monthly income after retirement.
Okay, I'm gonna just share something for you guys, and then you guys can kind of see. We've built this kind of explanation to pension funds. So in zakat, there are generally so the general understanding of zakat is to have wealth that is growing, or savings. If it's wealth or currencies like elastic currencies like money, and an RSP or pension fund is where you're taking that wealth, or that wealth is being taken and being locked away, usually for tax shelling and protecting yourself from taxation, and using them in the future. Now, the second general condition that you'll have in zakat is called a tasarruf. You cannot be considered an owner of something until you actually have the ability to act in that wealth. However, acting in that wealth is only one aspect. If you invest in something, it's growing on its own. You're not doing anything with it, but it's growing on its own. So because they're al-mal al-nami. So what we have kind of done here is we have looked at it. Look, you could see, and bear with me, employers' contributions. If the employer did not invest those assets or that wealth into RSP, then it's not going to be zakatable. Because you have no access to that money, nor is it growing wealth. The second, if they do invest, then it would depend. It would depend on if you have access to this or not. So if the employer invests, would be the same as if you and the employer invests. Okay, so this is why you'll see here employers' contributions along with the employers and the employee, both of them. So it could be just the employer himself or the employee himself or both. Either way, it will come down to whether they have access to the funds or not. If they have access to them, then they are zakatable. If they are in savings and accessible. If they are invested, then they will also be zakatable. However, if you do not have access to them, then is where it could come into two different categories. One is where they are invested. If you don't have access, but they're growing wealth, then it is al-mal al-nami, it is going to be growing wealth and you have to pay zakat on it. However, if it is uninvested and there's no accessibility to that wealth, then it is as though that person does not have ownership of that wealth in the meantime. And it can become like a very very strong loan, where the person can one day get the money, doesn't have it now, and he doesn't know when he is going to get it yet. So then it will not be zakatable now until he withdraws it in his retirement. Then it will become zakatable, and he does not need to backdate. All right, I hope that answers the question.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Now I'm going to go through the questions on the chat based on the order we received them. The first question on the chat is, I understand cash savings of year one person saving of the year is $100. Is the zakat due on $90 or $100? Means zakat due after $10 or start from the first dollar?
$90.
$90. Okay, good. I hope that answers. Then the second question from the same person, gold is 85 grams. If one has 86 gram jewelry, is the zakat due on 86 gram or 1 gram? Means it is due on the rest of the weight after going beyond the nisab, which is 1 gram, or on the total as 86 gram.
So if this scenario, if the nisab is 86 grams and the person only has 85 grams of gold, then they will not be required to pay zakat, only in the case where that is their only asset. If they have gold and other cash, etc., then they would reach the nisab and then they would be paying it on its entirety.
All right, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. And one last question, which is quite practical. The question is, goldsmith shops are closed due to COVID-19. How to determine selling price of gold jewelry? What's your answer, Sheikh?
It's always based on current market value. Obviously, market value will fluctuate based on economic factors, just like global issues like COVID-19. If the value of gold increases or decreases, by all means, that's not really our concern. We'll take whatever the instant value is.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. I think there is one other question, I believe, that has already been answered by you in terms of the, okay. Keen to know the zakat treatment to corporate or government bonds issued on its regular periodical income investment in funds, cash in the account for less than 1 year, and on property rented.
Ideally, government bonds are itself problematic
in
terms of the Sharia aspect.
I see. And then the second part of that question is cash in the account for less than 1 year and or property rented. So how do we treat the property
rented?
Yes.
The value of the property will not be zakatable.
Uh-huh.
However, the rent that is collected and then accumulated within cash will be zakatable.
Okay. And then the next question is, if I have personal loan, do I have to pay zakat?
If you have personal loan owed or given?
Well, I think we need to clarify that question. So I'll come to that once this brother clarifies his question. Okay. Then how to calculate zakat on cash? Do you calculate on savings or running balance?
It's a total value.
Okay. Then the next question is, if you have any outstanding debt, how much you deduct from your zakatable assets? Is that the entire amount, 1 month's payment, or 12 months for a year? Please
What type of
confirm.
debt are they're saying? They're not clarifying. They need to clarify what debt they're, because it could
Uh-huh.
be a different type of debt.
I see. I see. Okay, then I would wait for that clarification from the brother who asked the question. Um, okay, is zakat fard on a piece of land that is left by a deceased parent and is still under the deceased name?
If the land was purchased for the purpose of selling, then with that intention, then it would be zakatable. Otherwise, it would be on zakatable once it's sold, the money retained.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Then the next question is, once you determine the zakat, can you pay it on monthly basis in the entire year?
Some scholars have allowed it. I prefer not to be done that.
I see. I see. I think you answered this question just quickly, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. The question is, how is an OSAP loan, which is payable after graduation in a couple of years, treated in zakat calculation? Similarly, how is a car lease with a residual buyback value 2 years later to be treated?
So, like in a student loan, then it's a long-term loan.
Mhm.
Just within that 12 months, whatever's paid in that 12 months can be deducted. And the same thing for the car, whatever current lease can be deducted, excluding any interest. And then if there's a buyout period after that of $15,000-$20,000, then and that person chooses to pay it, then obviously that would eat from their assets immediately.
Okay. All right. I know we are on the top of the hour, but let me check if there are any other questions. Hold on. I don't think, hold on. Yes, there are a few others. Pension fund, RRSP, my company deduct money and deposits in pension fund. I cannot use this money in these years and will only become available to me after my retirement. I think you had clarified this
Did they say
question.
he said invested there?
So in RRSP,
Yeah, invested. Then yeah, then he'll pay zakat.
oh, if it is vested, okay, okay. And then should I keep paying zakat on accumulated balance of my pension fund throughout my life on this money?
So could you say that one again?
Sorry, the same person is asking, should I keep paying zakat on accumulated balance of my pension fund throughout my life on this money?
Yes.
Okay. Um, okay. Please address zakat on precious. Okay, that's done. Hold on, another. Any other for how you personally expect to pay back a loan? Okay. How do you calculate zakat? Yeah, I think you already did for the RRSP. Okay. Okay. There's a question. Does zakat applicable on RESP?
Is zakat applicable? Yes. Yes.
RESP. Yeah. Registered educational.
Yes. Yes. It would be.
Yeah. Okay. Um,
Whatever amount
I
you've invested.
and then there's a clarification, not a question. So I thought your principal home is excluded from the zakat calculation. Is this correct?
Yes. It
Okay.
is until it's sold and profits are made.
Got it. Got it. Okay. I think there is a comment. I don't know whether this is a question. I think it is a good point. If the nisab is set at too low level, then most of the people will not be eligible to receive zakat.
I think he's commenting on Sheikh Mu'ad's point. It's really about it's not really only about eligibility. It's about defining those people within fuqara masaki. And
Okay.
if a person, if we take in consideration gold, which can turn about $6,000 to $7,000, then it'd be very hard to even make somebody eligible of fuqara masaki.
Okay. Um, Yeah, I think you have already answered this question about the leases. Yeah, whatever you are paying as a lease, it is deductible, and only when there is a residual value, when you have to sell, then that becomes the zakatable amount. So I think Farhan Khwaja's question has been answered. Now, the other question is there any hadith to find out that you cannot give zakat to Sayyid family?
Yes, Hadith of Bukhari.
I see, I see.
And
Okay.
even the Prophet ﷺ, he did not take any zakat himself,
Uh-huh.
explaining this was the reason.
Okay, Farhan Khwaja, I think this has already been answered. Yes, you can use the lease payments that you are paying minus the interest, but since you are 0%, it should be considered as deductible. I think you already answered that question. Um, okay, Farha, again, one question. I'm sorry, we are almost 5 minutes past the hour. Is that okay, Sheikh? We just take the last few questions and conclude this session?
I have no problem.
Jazakallah khair, everyone. Also in UAE, the rents are paid upfront. I have an apartment in UAE and the rental is fully consumed in paying the Islamic mortgage there. Should I consider this as rental income in Nisab?
Okay, could you clarify that?
Okay, sorry. So the brother is saying that he is receiving rents in UAE, but what he is doing is the entire amount that he is receiving, he's paying towards the Islamic mortgage. He is not really, like saving anything out of that, but he's paying towards the mortgage. So should he still consider the rental income in
No,
Nisab?
you cannot be dividing or separating that asset value. So what he is doing, the way that the question seems, is that he is considering his assets,
Yeah.
personal assets and his personal liabilities are one thing, and then he's taking in consideration a rental property with its mortgage on it, and then the rent that comes out of it, whether there are proceeds or not. It's not like that. They're not separated from him. That
Okay.
rental property is within his assets. So
Okay.
whatever he retains, it is what he retains.
I see. I see. Okay. And then is there bills calculate for the 12 months to like mortgage principal deductible? Like,
No, I mentioned that you cannot take or you can deduct within 12 months the principal void of interest.
got it. Okay. And then what is the ruling on land residential plots? Should I consider the market value in Nisab every year or only at purchase? I think you had already clarified this. Once you sell it, then it becomes eligible for zakat.
Well, for land, you have two things. Land,
Okay.
one thing is that if you have the intention to sell, then it's zakatable always. If you intention to buy to sell, you bought it just to sell, then it's always going to be zakatable.
Got it.
Otherwise, if it's just invested, for example, you bought it just as an investment or business purpose, then it'll be zakatable as well. But if you bought it and then you have no clear intention there to sell or anything like this, then and it's rented out, for example, then you will be only the rent will be zakatable. And the case of land is a little more tricky because a lot of people buy the land in hope of its appreciation. If they're buying it in hope of appreciation to sell it at an appreciated value, then the intention is selling.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thanks very much. Now, another question is child's RESP zakatable? I think you already answered the question as yes. Correct,
That
Sheikh?
amount is vested by the parent.
Okay. And then how do you calculate zakat on pharmacy stocks? Because it comes and goes because the items get sold and new stock is purchased.
Just at the end of the year, whatever is remaining.
I
Buying and
see.
selling is fine. It's a natural part.
Okay. All right. So I think we are almost 8 minutes past the hour. I think we may have to conclude this session, because other people may had hard stop at 3 p.m. So really, truly appreciate your time, Sheikh Nabil, Sheikh Muaz, Brother Zaid, yeah, for your time, and Jazakallah khair everyone for participating in this session and also asking some brilliant questions on the chat. So once again, Jazakallah khair. You all have a blessed day. Assalamu-Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله